In this video, I will be recapping the notable storms to have struck New York City in the time I can remember. This is going to be mostly a personal account, but I will take into consideration meteorological statistics. And the most memorable storm that I can remember in recent memory is going to be the kitchen sink storm of December 23rd, 2022. I'm not saying it was a bad storm. I heard the city got 1.8 inches, but down here on Long Island, we didn't even receive half an inch. Some places didn't even receive 1/6 of an inch of rain. But it was that plus howling winds, plus dropping temperatures. No jacket or sweatshirt was needed going to school, as temperatures were still 54 degrees after peaking at 58. However, a jacket was necessary to leave school, by which point temperatures had already dropped down into the 30s as the final bands of rain were moving through, and wind chills had dropped below freezing. Then, I remember going for a walk. So it started off in a snow squall as the final bands of precipitation moved out. However, no accumulating snow occurred north of Trenton, so none of the snow accumulated, mainly because the ground was warm from it being in the 50s for so long. After that, the temperature was 35 degrees with a wind chill of 23, and during that walk, I saw the tweet that New York City had dropped below freezing and was about to start a cold wave. Then I remember coming back, by which point it was 32 degrees and it felt like 19. That temperature just kept dropping. By dinner time, it was 21 degrees and it felt like 3. And that was the last time I was even allowed to go outside that night. By the time I went to bed, it was already 11 degrees with a wind chill in the negative double digits. And when I woke up the next morning, it was 7 degrees with a wind chill of negative 11. That was a really ugly storm, and the reason why it was so memorable was because you had so much rain coming down, then the Arctic flash front. It was even more memorable for me personally, considering that I was about to go down to Florida. Normally you'd expect Florida to be an escape from gloomy weather, but the gloomy weather followed us down there as well. When we landed in Florida, it was only about 50 degrees, which is still a lot warmer than at the airport where it was 11 degrees when we got dropped off with a wind chill that was still sub-zero. That being said, when we got to Florida, it was still 49 degrees. Even with the sweatshirt, it was tempted to put my winter jacket on, but I decided I really couldn't because wearing 3 long sleeve layers when it's 49 degrees is just weird, and I couldn't agree with that. On Christmas, it was cloudy and cold, and the high temperature didn't even make its way up to 50. And wind chills throughout the day dropped into the 30s. It was definitely not the Florida that we were used to in any way, shape, or form. On Boxing Day, after a not totally crappy day, I mean the high temperature was in the upper 50s, rain moved through while we were trying to get into FTX Arena, totally screwing us over and making us nearly miss the NBA game against the Minnesota Timberwolves. I just remember that it was so bad, mainly because of what it did to the temperatures, even in Florida, on top of, obviously, the impacts that it caused in New York. But I do feel like for a lot of New Yorkers, this would be a memorable storm, as it was a kitchen sink storm. Central Park broke the record for the most extreme 24-hour temperature drop, as temps went from 58 down to 8 by midnight, and would then slide down to 7. So, I do have a lot of memories from that. And so do a lot of people. Then, I think Ian is the next storm that everyone remembers. The reason why we remember it, though, was just because of the 5 days of crummy weather at the start of October. You were honestly lucky if you could squeak out any time with temperatures in the 60s as through most of this run, it was in the 50s or even worse, upper 40s. Upper 40s with pouring rain. Rain was over 3 inches from this entire event. Things like the Bronx Fit Fest were canceled, and that was just on the first day when it was actually Ian. Ian disintegrated, but then a nor'easter stayed in place, which brought even more crummy weather. The worst of the weather was on October 3rd and 4th. On October 5th, skies finally began to clear out, and temperatures made their way up to 59 degrees. But then, at dinner time, a thunderstorm moved in. However, we did see 70s on October 6th, marking the end of nearly a week of bad weather. Before this, the most memorable storm that I remember was the flash floods of July 18th. I wasn't here, and not in my own area where I live would have personally been memorable, but I remember it because it caused an oil spill on Interstate 80, leading to an hour-long delay. It was really bad because it dropped 1.8 inches of rain on New York City, and most of it came down in 2 45-minute periods. So you had sinkholes and subway issues, and it was a disaster. Now, as we go back further in time, I do only remember that I'm going to remember less and less stuff. So the frequency of the coverage will begin to become less and less. As a matter of fact, before this, this is probably due to bland weather in New York, but the most recent storm I remember before this was the ice storm on February 25th. I remember this for a few reasons. First of all, it knocked out my power. Any storm that knocks out my power will automatically be on this list, even if it's just a random thunderstorm. And there is a random thunderstorm that's on this video. In addition, I wasn't here for it, but while I was suffering record cold in Seattle with a high of 36 and a low of 22, temperatures soared to a record-breaking 68 on Long Island, which is one of the hottest ever February temperatures on record. For the 68 in Central Park failed to set a record, but it was already gone, I remember, by the time I came back. It was already in the 30s by that night, and by the time I landed, it was only 34 degrees. The next time that it would get so warm wasn't until March 18th, and because I was doing bad with the classes, the next time we could actually feel that warmth was actually on April 12th. I was forced to wait 6 weeks, probably actually more than that, just to get a taste of warm weather, because I was in Seattle where we were battling record cold. We would still get some more cold weather in New York in March. Finally, I do remember this for being memorable because I was on a flight, and because they were doing a lot of changing of flight schedules, someone booked the otherwise empty seat that was going to be next to me, and we were one of the only rows to have a filled-in seat, making for a not-so-comfortable 6-hour flight. Actually, none of my flights were really comfortable this year, and I'm going to be going on another flight in a few days. So, lucky me. Oh, and also that storm on February 20th and 21st out in Washington is what brought all the cold air down anyway. I do remember taking a hike at Tryon Brookings Creek State Park, and on the way down there I saw snow, and it was also 35 degrees. 35 degrees. So, aka none of this was very comfortable. Now, as far as the storms go, January 29th was a very memorable storm, as it dumped nearly 1.5 feet of snow that I remember actually storm chasing, but I forgot to make the video. January 7th dumped about 8 inches of snow in the morning that forced school to go virtual for the day. November 13th brought tornadoes on Long Island, and it was one of the first ever times I was dealing with a tornado warning. And being in a Broadway mall, it was actually very scary for me. Also, we went in the mall with temperatures, in the low 60s, and by the time we left the mall, temperatures were down in the upper 40s. So forgetting to bring out a layering, thinking that the front wouldn't be so extreme, was a mistake, as temperatures were 61, and then they were 57, and then they were 52, and then they were 50, and then by the time we left, they were already down to 48 degrees. AKA an extreme temperature drop. But it doesn't get worse, right? Wrong. 2021 was actually a year of many storms across New York. September 1st to 2nd is probably the worst of them, as 50 people were killed in and around the New York metropolitan area. Some sites saw over 3 inches of rain in a single hour. Some places saw over 9 inches of rain total from this event, which, coming down in just about 7 hours, led to massive disruptions. A lot of it came down between 9 and 10 o'clock. This rain poured down, and I remember in my area we got somewhat spared by only receiving about 3 inches of rain, which is still a lot, but not nearly as bad as what completely ravaged New York City and led to all the fatalities. This storm was caused by a cooler air mass pressing up against a warm and humid air mass. Temperatures the day before were about 85 degrees, and dew points were in the low 70s, producing heat indexes in the low 90s. Then, all of a sudden, the cloud cover increases, keeping temperatures in the upper 70s, but the humidity doesn't go away. A cold front bringing cooler air with dew points in the 50s collides with this tropical system out in the Atlantic, or this remnant of a tropical system, leading to unprecedented flash flooding in New York City, in Newark, in LaGuardia, at Bridgeport. Really, Long Island only got spared because the rain just wasn't quite as much, but it was still noteworthy. I personally wasn't here for Henri. I was vacationing in Pittsburgh at the time, and so I really don't have a first-hand account of anything, as the weather remained completely undisturbed, and instead we were dealing with heat indexes of nearly 100 degrees Fahrenheit, as Henri brought a heat wave along with it. That being said, I do remember I was dealing with a lot of storms this summer. So, on July 8th, we were coming back from Kalahari in Pennsylvania. It was the worst commute of our lives, as they had to shut down portions of Interstate 95 and 87, the Henry Hudson Parkway, FDR Drive, numerous subways, they all got shut down. The result was an hour where we moved a mile, a measly mile. That's all we could do because of the storm. An inch and a half of rain poured down in just 1 hour, and the end result was over 2 inches of rain. Then the actual Elsa brought an inch and a half of more rain, which, while not as noteworthy, was still a little bit annoying. Skies did clear out, temperatures did return back up to 85 degrees, and then there was another nightly storm, aka a 2 days full of miserable weather. Now, could it get any worse? Not really, but I mean, it could try. Memorial Day weekend, I remember being a crummy weekend. High temperatures were in the low 50s, and that's not good on Memorial Day, but I don't remember anything too noteworthy out of it. As far as going through some of the other months, again, there was those February winter storms that I remember for being so bad. Collectively, they dumped over 2 feet of snow, 1.5 feet of it from just the storm on February 1st. it was so cold throughout the month, temperatures really couldn't hit the 50s, that we just saw the snow stay there. And when the snow was about to melt, more snow just came on top of it. There were the next time after January 31st, there was totally no snow on the ground, was actually on March 9th, when temperatures had finally hit the 60s for the first time of the year. Now, heading on into as far as December 2020, that also brought a nor'easter, led to school being canceled for a day. The February 2021 led to a canceled day and a virtual day of school. This storm dumped about 6 to 8 inches of snow out of Long Island, and about 10 inches of snow fell in New York City. The further west you were, the more snow fell, but the polar vortex would allow for there to be so much snow even on the coast. It wasn't so bad, but it was still heavily disruptive. It also led to a delay in being able to ship over COVID-19 vaccines. Remember those things you had to get at one point? Well, this is the first batch of them, but they were delayed by the nor'easter. Shipping was delayed by the nor'easter. There weren't too many other noteworthy storms that I remember in this time period. There were 2 tropical storms that had serious impacts. Isaias caused Isaias caused us to lose power for nearly a week, as 60-mile-an-hour winds led to extreme damage on our power grid. As a matter of fact, it actually led to a small earthquake with how many trees are falling down, and there was nothing that the power companies could do until Monday, because they had to restore people who had less extreme problems. And because the transmission engine blew at my grandmother's house at 3:18 a.m. on August 5th, they also couldn't do anything. It was a very bad situation, as we had pretty much nothing, and we couldn't stay in a hotel. We had no money for it, and also COVID. There wasn't that much rain, so it was at some point safe to actually go outside, but I wouldn't recommend it. I also went outside during Faye, which was about 2 inches of rain swamping the area. I remember I was trying to sit down, and my butt just got so wet. But besides from a canceled day of camp, there wasn't anything that bad. Isaias forced camp to cancel for a day, and the pool was shut down for almost the rest of the entire summer. It was bad. Now, what about, what about the rest of everything? So, 2020, I don't remember too many major storms because my mind is too focused on COVID. My memory from this point as far as weather goes actually begins to become a little bit clogged. While there was a bad thunderstorm that moved through the night of July 22nd, I was too busy being in Lake George to hear that the Long Island Expressway was closed due to flooding. My lips are so chapped, I need to get some chapstick. And from here on out, I don't remember too many storms. November 15th, 2018, I remember very vividly, for pretty much leading to a commute that should be 10 minutes at most, taking 35, about 5 inches of snow wound up falling, and it was even worse in the city where 6 inches fell. 2018 was actually a very stormy year. Very stormy year indeed. We saw bad storms in the summer, bad storms in May. We saw 5 inches of snow falling in early April. Actually, no, I've done that. Do not do that. 5 inches of snow falling in early April, but there was no shoveling required because of the strong April sunlight. As temperatures hit the mid-40s and the skies did clear afterwards. March 21st, 2018, and March 7th, 2018 led to nor'easters that canceled school, as quite a bit of it fell. You know, we saw on January 4th, 2018, during a bad cold wave, how school had to be canceled for 2 days due to about 1.5 feet of snow. It was very ugly. 2018 also saw, during the first day of the fourth quarter, a bad thunderstorm roll through our area, and Mrs. Sumad was yelling at us for being worried about it, even though it was causing problems. It was actually causing over 3 inches of rain in New York City. Subways were flooded. It led to a horrible Boston Marathon, but funnily enough, it was warm and balmy beforehand. It hit 82 and then 77. Temperatures then plunged down to 44 that night and stayed in the low 40s and upper 30s the next day. The next day, we were lashed with the heavy rain as temperatures rose up to 46, and by the time the skies cleared, it hit 60 degrees. So there was this phenomenon of the skies clearing and temperatures warming up significantly. After March the 21st, the high on the 22nd did hit 50 degrees. So it was like cold, and then it got warm after the storm passed. And that happened a lot. I don't remember too many storms from 2017. There was that bad storm that lasted us with multiple inches of rain on the 5-year anniversary of Sandy. We were stuck dealing with that. There was also a bad storm, a bad storm. What was that bad storm? I can't remember. Oh yeah, March 14th. I mean, it was supposed to be 1.5 feet of snow, and we got away with only 0.5 foot, which I was happy about, but it still did cause a lot of problems. February 9th also dumped us with nearly 1 foot of snow. I do remember throughout 2016, there weren't that many, that nasty storms I can recall upon in my good memory, but January 23rd dumped us with 2 feet of snow, and then we saw about 10 more inches of snow on February 5th. So it was quite a snowy blitz there, and what was otherwise a mild and snow-free winter. What about heading back 2015? On August 4th, a stray thunderstorm knocked out the power for 45 minutes. That's the only reason why I remember that random storm. I don't think it's important to anyone's history except mine. This is going to be the end of this video, but I will continue making this hopefully in a new video.